I never asked for a new mother, especially not the kind who smiled in public and hissed behind closed doors. My name is Claire Donovan, and for most of my childhood, it was just me and my dad. My mother passed away when I was 7, a soft, kind woman who smelled like warm cinnamon and lavender lotion. Her absence left a hollow ache that never truly healed. Dad tried, I'll give him that. He tried to juggle being a single father and a full-time accountant. But grief wore him down. Slowly, steadily, he grew quiet, not cold, just absent. Like a shell of the man he once was. Then came Cynthia. She was beautiful, that much I'll admit. Long dark hair, perfectly manicured nails, always dressed like she was on her way to a magazine shoot. I was 11 when she entered our lives, wearing a red dress and carrying a tray of homemade cookies that tasted like deception. Dad fell for her charm almost instantly. I didn't. There was something too polished, too precise about her smile. Within a year, she moved in. By the next, they were married. I wore a pale yellow dress at the wedding and stood stiffly by Cynthia's side. She kissed my cheek for the photos and whispered, "Smile bigger, sweetie." Let's not ruin Daddy's big day. From that moment on, the house I once called home became a silent battlefield. At first, it was subtle. She forgot to pack my lunch. She accidentally donated my favorite books. She'd compliment me in front of Dad and criticize me behind his back. By the time I was 13, Cynthia had transformed me into her unpaid housemaid. "Claire, the dishes won't wash themselves. Claire, I expect the floors to shine by the time I'm back. Claire, no phone until you finish my laundry." And my dad. Oblivious, whenever he walked through the door, Cynthia morphed into Mother of the Year. She'd plant kisses on his cheek, make pot roast, and ask about his day. Meanwhile, I scrubbed grout on my knees and stared at a woman who stole my voice and my father in equal measure. I complained once, just once. Dad looked tired when I told him, "Claire, she's trying." "It's not easy stepping into your mother's shoes." That sentence broke me in ways I couldn't express. Because Cynthia didn't step into my mother's shoes, she burned them. School became my refuge not because it was great, but because it wasn't Cynthia's domain. I joined clubs just to stay out late. I volunteered on weekends to avoid cleaning the garage. I made friends slowly, carefully. Telling anyone what home was really like felt dangerous. After all, what could they do? No bruises, no broken bones, just invisible cracks no one could see. Except one person, Miss Allen, my English teacher. She was the first adult who saw through my rehearsed smile. "You always write about trapped birds," she said once. "Why don't you write about letting them go?" I shrugged. "Maybe because they wouldn't know where to fly." She gave me extra journals. "Write anyway," she said. I did. Those journals saved my sanity. When I turned 16, Cynthia got bold. She told Dad I was struggling with attitude and could benefit from more discipline. I was grounded for not vacuuming under the couch. She said I was acting out because I missed my mother and told me I was lucky she tolerated me. But the worst day came that summer. Dad had gone on a business trip. I'd just gotten home from a part-time job at the local diner. Exhausted, sweaty, and starving, Cynthia stood at the doorway. "The upstairs bathroom has mildew. You know what to do." I stood frozen. "Can I eat first?" Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." "I haven't eaten all day," I repeated quietly. She stepped forward, lowering her voice. "You think this is a negotiation. This is my house now, Claire. You eat when your work is done." That's when it clicked. She didn't want a daughter. She wanted a servant. And I was done playing the role. That night, I cried harder than I had in years, not because of the mildew or hunger, but because I realized that no one was coming to save me. So I decided to save myself. 1 week later, Cynthia made a mistake. She asked me to clean her home office, a room usually off limits. Maybe she thought I was too broken to question it, but something inside me had shifted. As I dusted her bookshelf, I noticed a drawer locked, silver and unmarked. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. That night, I borrowed a small lockpick set from my friend Jenna. Her older brother was into puzzles and escape rooms. I waited until Cynthia left for her yoga class. The lock clicked open with a soft snap. Inside were envelopes, dozens, letters with bank names, financial statements, and documents. My fingers trembled as I read. Multiple accounts, transfers from Dad's company. Unusual withdrawals. A hidden life written in ink. Cynthia had been siphoning money from my father for years, tens of thousands of dollars. And not just that, she had debts, liens, connections to shady businesses. I snapped photos with my phone, then closed the drawer quietly. That night, I didn't cry. I smiled, because finally, I had power. The next morning, Cynthia was all smiles again, wearing silk and stirring oatmeal as if she hadn't turned into a demon the night before. I played along. I always played along, but now I had a secret, a weapon. A string of digital files safely backed up to an encrypted folder on my phone and my cloud. I didn't know what I would do yet, but I knew something had shifted, something irreversible. The power dynamic had tilted, even if she didn't know it yet. Over the next few weeks, I started documenting everything. Her passive-aggressive comments, her random punishments, her verbal outbursts when Dad wasn't around. I recorded audio discreetly, saved screenshots of her messages, and kept a journal with exact dates and times. I wasn't sure why I was gathering evidence. Maybe I hoped one day Dad would see the truth. Maybe I was building a case for emancipation. Or maybe deep down I just needed to know I wasn't crazy. Because gaslighting, you see, is a special kind of cruelty. It makes you question your own memories, your own worth. Cynthia was a master at it. One night she told me I had forgotten to take out the trash, something I had done an hour earlier. When I insisted, she smiled coldly and said, "If you lie to yourself this much, no wonder you have no friends." She knew how to stab without ever raising her voice. But I endured. I endured because I had purpose now. Ms. Allen, my English teacher, remained my anchor. I started staying after class more, helping her organize books and grade papers. One day she asked, "How's life at home, Claire?" Really, I hesitated. Then I lied. "It's okay," but my eyes must have said otherwise. She handed me a college prep booklet. Get out of there. Go far. Apply early. Apply everywhere. You're smart. Too smart to waste away under someone else's shadow. That night, I opened a blank Google Doc and titled it Escape Plan. Digging deeper into Cynthia's documents became a nightly ritual. I discovered she had a PO box I hadn't known about, a second phone hidden in her gym bag. Contacts saved under vague names, Masona, Benny Fix, she wasn't just shady. She was criminal. At one point, I came across an email she'd printed and stashed in her desk, one that referred to a shell company linked to one of Dad's biggest clients. It dawned on me that Cynthia wasn't just draining our family's money. She might be setting up my father to take the fall for financial fraud. That changed everything. My revenge could no longer be personal. It had to be strategic, surgical. Everything came to a head one rainy Tuesday. I came home from school soaked and tired. Cynthia was already in the living room, sipping wine at 4 p.m. She looked me up and down and said, "Could you be any more useless looking?" I walked past her silently, my jaw clenched, but she wasn't done. "Don't think I don't know what you're doing, sneaking around, snooping. You're not smart enough to play games with me, Claire." I paused at the stairs, turned slowly. "Then maybe stop underestimating me," I said, calmly, coldly. Her face twitched just for a second. Then she laughed. "You're bluffing." Just a scared little girl playing detective, but her voice trembled just a little. That night, I added one more file to my folder, verbal threat -5/17. The final push came from a phone call. Miss Allen had recommended me for a summer journalism internship at a local paper. I got it. When I told Cynthia, she looked unimpressed. That won't pay bills. You should be focusing on how to be a decent housewife. I smiled. That's not in my career plans, she scoffed. Don't come crying to me when you fail. But I didn't fail. I started the internship the next week, and within days, I was learning about FOIA requests, investigative tools, and how to dig into corporate corruption. For the first time, my revenge had a structure. I wasn't just going to expose Cynthia. I was going to bury her. My internship office smelled like paper and old coffee, but to me, it smelled like freedom. Every morning I arrived early, logged in, and studied how reporters built their stories. By the end of the second week, I knew I had enough to write my own, but my story wasn't just any expose. It was personal. It was dangerous. It was about Cynthia. I gave it a code name, Operation Stepmother. I began organizing all the evidence into folders, digital scans, audio files, photos, and transcripts. Using skills from the internship, I created a timeline of events, linking financial records to shell corporations and identifying patterns in Cynthia's transfers. I even contacted one of the names on her secret phone, Mason A. I pretended to be a confused assistant and asked about our usual deposits. His nervous response was gold. He clearly thought I was someone inside the operation. That voicemail alone was enough to scare any criminal. At night, I printed copies of the most damning documents and sealed them in an envelope. On the outside, I wrote, "To Dad, read alone." I slipped it into his briefcase early in the morning before school. Then I waited. That evening, he came home looking pale. He didn't say a word. Cynthia was quiet, too quiet. By morning, I found the envelope on my desk, unopened, with a sticky note, "Don't play games with me." See, she had found it first. That night was hell. Cynthia accused me of trying to sabotage the family. She cried in front of Dad, told him I had been unstable lately, that I'd been making up lies. And Dad, tired, overworked, and emotionally drained, believed her. He told me to stop acting out and focus on school. I felt the floor beneath me collapse, but I wasn't done. If I couldn't go through my father, I'd go around him. Using my journalism connections, I anonymously tipped off a reporter known for digging into corporate fraud. I uploaded Cynthia's files to a secure Dropbox and labeled everything, source, internal family whistleblower. 2 weeks later, that reporter published a bombshell story about shell companies funneling funds through legal firms, complete with redacted documents that looked eerily familiar. Cynthia's face turned ashen when she saw the article on the news. She looked at me. I looked back and smiled. The fallout began almost instantly. News trucks parked at the end of our driveway. My father's law firm issued a public statement distancing themselves from Cynthia, claiming ignorance of her private dealings. The firm was under investigation. Dad confronted her in the kitchen, voice shaking. "Tell me everything, Cynthia, now." She spun a web of half-truths, cried crocodile tears. But it was too late. The public trail was damning. The phone rang off the hook. Reporters, investigators, former clients. Cynthia's polished life unraveled in front of her. A week later, she was served a subpoena. She tried to play innocent, but her face was everywhere: online news, financial scandal blogs, even cable talk shows. I watched it all with quiet satisfaction. Dad refused to speak to her. He moved into the guest house and barely made eye contact with me, but I saw at the flicker of realization, of regret. He knew I had tried to warn him. I packed my things 2 months early. Ms. Allen helped me get a scholarship at a college far from home. Far from Cynthia, far from everything. The night before I left, Dad knocked on my door. For a long moment, he just stood there. "I should have listened," he said. "You still can," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Be safe, Claire. Make something of yourself." I smiled. I already have. 3 years later, I published my first book, House of Cards, How One Woman Almost Took Down a Law Empire. It became a bestseller. Cynthia pled guilty to multiple charges. Her sentence was reduced with a plea deal, but her reputation was gone. She lives alone now in a small town, no longer silk-robed or smug. As for me, I live free, I live boldly, and I never forget the girl who once played maid in her own home, only to become the woman who burned the whole house down. Years later, as I stood at the podium delivering the keynote speech at an investigative journalism conference, I caught my reflection in the glass. A confident woman, a far cry from the girl who once flinched at every slammed door. My story had gone viral, though no one knew it was mine. The whistleblower was never named until today. There was once a girl, I began, whose stepmother underestimated her. And that mistake cost her everything. The room was silent. I smiled. Somewhere out there, Cynthia might be watching. Good. Let her remember I didn't just survive. I rose.